Hi, I'm Deanna Gosha, and this workshop is Dr. Seuss and the Bible. You know, when my children were preschoolers, they loved certain kinds of books. In fact, I have one here that we read so many times that the cover is actually tearing off. If you have children, you probably have some books like that. This one was Hop on Pop by Dr. Seuss. And one of the things that was so exciting for them became like a tradition in our house. I'm trying to find it. Here we go. Is a part where the two kids are hopping on Pop. And I would read that. Hop, Pop, we like to hop on top of Pop. And no matter what was going on in the house, my boys would take off trying to find their father. And if their father was home, they would tackle him so he'd fall on the ground, and then they would jump up and down on him until I would yell out, "Stop! You must not hop on Pop." And then they would stop. We had a lot of fun reading Green Eggs and Ham and making green eggs and ham when we would do Where the Wild Things Are. Oh my goodness, we would have so much fun. We would crank the music up when we got to the Wild Rumpus, and we would just dance around like crazy. In fact, one time we even made masks similar to this that everybody wore and surprised their dad when they came home and did huge dances to it. It was just a lot of fun. And so what is it about stories that can really capture kids' attention? I feel like that a story is very similar to music, and that when we hear music, there's an emotional response that takes place somewhere inside of us. You could probably, if I were to say, what is a song that would just take you back to a certain moment in time, you could probably think of something. And it's the same thing with kids, that with stories, they just get this emotional response to them. Even us as an adult, if somebody's telling a story and they do it in a really, they do a good job with it, it's just going to capture our attention. So that's why I believe that stories are such a great way to teach kids. Now, Jesus used stories all the time, and when he was trying to make points. And even though we're in this age where preschoolers can work a DVD player or an iPad or an iPhone or a computer as well as we can, I still believe that they're captured by stories. And all you have to do is pull out a book and watch the kids cluster around you if you're in a group of kids to know that that's true. So what I'm going to do today is basically three things. The first thing is I'm going to show you 11 different classical literature books, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the spiritual connections. Now, you should have been able to download a handout from me, and on that handout I have the name of the book, I have the spiritual connection, I have a Bible verse where that spiritual connection came from, I have and then I also have Bible stories that if you wanted to develop a lesson out of that, that would give you some ideas of how to do that. The second thing I'm going to do is to show you how you might take one of these books and make a complete lesson out of that for, I don't know, Sunday or Saturday night worship, or maybe a Wednesday night program. And then the final thing I'm going to do is talk about some outreach events that I've done, or that others have done, that would be able to, you could, use these books on to help you. So let's get started. The first book I want to talk about is The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle. Now, Eric Carle has a really unique way of doing his art. Like on the back here, I love this leaf and the egg and the caterpillar and the sun. And what the artwork looks like is that he's just taken a brush and just painted the different colors on paper, and then has cut it out and glued it on a piece of paper, and that's what the art how he gets his artwork. Now, in The Very Hungry Caterpillar, you basically have an egg that starts off, and then the egg will hatch. You have a caterpillar. He eats a ton of junk food and just other foods, or good foods, excuse me. There's a little bit of junk food that that's put in there. And so a lot of times in the schools, teachers will use this to talk about colors. They'll use it to talk about good eating habits. But I think in the church community, or in when we're doing spiritual truth, that it's just perfect for talking about the resurrection, or talking about becoming a new creation in Christ. You know, because as this caterpillar grows and grows, at some point he goes into the cocoon and then he comes out as a butterfly. And what a great way to talk about becoming a new creation. It's perfect for using with the Easter story. Now, the second book I want to talk about is probably one of my new favorite series. I wish these books would have been around when my kids were little. They're teenagers now, so they're way past that. But this is Llama. And he is, you know, he's probably 2 or 3, 4 years old. And the author, Anna Dewdney, does such an amazing job of just like reaching into his head and pulling out exactly how a 3-year-old thinks. You know, you would think that she had just crawled into a 3-year-old's body and just have become a 3-year-old, you know, that whole time. Because it's just, I mean, I hope you can see that face. It's hilarious, you know. I mean, you can see him pouting, you can see the lips come out, you can see the eyes, and that's exactly how, you know, preschoolers can be. In this book, Llama is playing very happily, and Mama comes in, and she wants to go to the Shop-a-Rama. I mean, I love that the whole thing rhymes all the way through. And so Llama is like, okay, fine, I'll go to Shop-a-Rama, but he's not happy about it. He gets there, he puts up with it for a little while, but he gets tired of the trying on of clothes and the shopping and the aisles and all the things that go with it. And he starts throwing a fit. And he doesn't just throw like a whiny fit. He throws one of those fits that, you know, when my kids were young, would cause me to look like I'd run a marathon. You know, the sweat is pouring, you're looking around to see who's looking, you feel like the worst Mother of the Year award. So here he goes, and things are just flying off the shelves, flying out of the cart as he starts to throw things out of the cart. And here's just a great picture that kids will love to see. But what's really cool about this is the Llama, you know, she's just very calm about it. Llama, that's enough. Please stop fussing, little Llama. No more of this llama drama. I think shopping's boring too, but at least I'm here with you. And she just goes on to win him over to her side, explaining, you know, the behavior is absolutely not something she's going to put up with. And he feels bad, he repents, he puts the stuff back in the cart, he helps her out, and in the end, you know, they go and have an ice cream cone together. What I like about this is, you know, you could use it to show obedience, you could use it to show respect, but what at the heart of that is little Llama's selfishness, that all he wants to do is play with his toys or not have to be in the store, and he doesn't even stop for a minute to think about what he's doing to his mom. You know, here his mom is going shopping to buy food for him, and he's not appreciative of that. All he cares about is himself. And what a great lesson to teach kids that, you know, when you go with your parents to the store, you know, they're there to help you out, you know, if it's the grocery store or clothes shopping, whatever. And you are being so selfish when you can only think about yourself and how your feet hurt, or, you know, how you want this candy, and whatever it is that they, you know, they do in the stores. So perfect for that. Philippians 2:4, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. And you could also tie in like the prodigal son, the second son's attitude during that time. The third book I want to talk about, which I've mentioned already, is Where the Wild Things Are. Now, usually when we do the Where the Wild Things Are in the schools or whatever, it's kind of focused on that dream. And what happens is the little boy is very naughty. He tells his mother, I'm going to eat you up. She sends him to bed without supper. And then he falls asleep and goes into this dream. And, you know, the monsters come out and they dance. And that's all fun. And then he gets, his bed is like a boat. And he sails back home, and his mom has brought him dinner. What I like to focus on is this is a great introduction to talking about being disrespectful to your parents. And this is a perfect example of a little boy that made a choice to be disrespectful to his mom when his mom was trying to calm him down, and the consequences of having to go to his room. It's also great to talk about grace and forgiveness because the mom does forgive him, brings in the meal when he wakes up. He has a meal there, and he didn't deserve it. He didn't. The way he was acting, he certainly didn't deserve just to the grace that was shown to him. So that's, it's a good springboard for those. I found that books fall into one of two categories, and one of the categories is it naturally teaches the lesson. It's like you wouldn't even have to talk about it, that whatever spiritual truth you're trying to get across is just gonna pop out at kids. Where this one, it's more of an introduction where you would read it and then you'd say, well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about why is it that mom or why is it that little boy acted that way to his mom? And is that okay? And is that the way you should, act to your, your parents? And so it just opens up that whole dialogue. The fourth book I want to talk about is Corduroy by Don Freeman. This is an old classic. Excuse me, I had that off the camera there. But the pictures are old-fashioned. Sometimes that's just fun for them to see pictures that are a little bit different. And the thing about these pictures are they're very simple, and they're so you can really see the action of whatever character is being talked about. Now, Corduroy is a bear who has lost a button on his overalls. And a little girl comes shopping, and she sees him, and she's not able to buy him right then. She goes home, and she can't quit thinking about him. And while she's at home, it just talks about he's heard the conversation with the mom and the daughter about the missing button, and he's trying to figure out what he's going to do about it. And she saves up her money, and she gets permission from her mom to come back and buy him, and she buys him. And it's a great story to talk about acceptance, that how Jesus accepts us just the way we are. You could tie in David being chosen to be king, that he was not the one that you would think would be king when he had all these older brothers, and yet he was the one that was chosen. The same thing is like Jesus calling a tax collector. Certainly not the kind of person you'd think Jesus would go have dinner with, and yet he did that. And that it's the same with them. No matter how young you are, no matter how big, Jesus accepts you just like you are. Now, once when I was at a conference and I was talking about this one, somebody said, my husband really doesn't like that book because in the end the girl fixes him. Like, because something was wrong with him, he really wasn't good enough. And I said, well, true, but, we can talk about how Jesus loves us too much to keep us just the way we are. He accepts us the way we are, but he helps us to work on the things that we need to work on, and he loves us too much to leave us the way we are. The next book is The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Absolute perfect book for talking about obedience. I mean, you can read this, not have to say another word, and the kids are going to get it. They're going to be like, oh, wow, he should have obeyed his mom with what happened. And if you're not familiar with the story, it's a little Peter Rabbit is naughty, and his mom has told him not to go into Mr. McGregor's garden. And he crawls underneath the fence, and into the garden he goes. And Mr. McGregor sees him and starts chasing him through the garden. And there's just, there's lots of tension as you wonder, is he going to be caught or not? He narrowly escapes and finds his way home. And when he gets home, he finds out that his mother has found out what's going on, and that night he has to go to bed, and his brothers and sisters get to eat the blackberry pie that she's made. But, it's Ephesians 6:1, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Great verse to go with that. You could pull in Noah obeying God when he built the ark. You could talk about the boy Jesus and how he obeyed his parents. So lots of tie-ins there. Then another Llama Llama book that I love is Llama Llama Red Pajama. And again, you can just see this kid, or llama, I guess, not a kid, and he's just, ah! Because he has been tucked into bed, his mama has read to him, and left him alone. And as he's laying there in bed, as preschoolers will do, he starts to feel alone. And there he is, realizing I'm all alone and I'm feeling it. And then he decides he wants a drink. But, Mama's at the kitchen sink. She's doing the dishes. So he calls to her, and she says she'll be up soon. Baby llama hums a tune. And so at first, he's trying to deal with the fact she's not coming right away. But then he feels like he's waiting entirely too long, and he starts to fret. And he's moved now to the edge of the bed, and he's kind of peering over it, and he sees the light, and he's trying to decide what in the world is going on with Mama. And then he crawls back under the covers, and he starts to whimper. But then the phone rings, and so Mama gets on the phone, and baby llama starts to moan. And he listens for his mama, but what's she doing? And then he starts boo-hooing. And before long, he looks like this, as he is yelling for his mom. And he is jumping up and down, and he's stomping, and he's pouting, and he's shouting, because his mom is not coming soon enough. And of course, once he starts, we want to get this too, because that is just priceless too. The little kid, or llama, I guess, peering out from under the covers. And, will his mama ever come? And of course she comes running to them, and she talks to him about, sometimes when you call, I cannot come right away. So you need to be patient. And just because I don't come right away doesn't mean that I'm not here. It's such a great verse to talk about with this is when I'm afraid, I put my trust in you, from Psalms 56:3. You can talk about the disciples in the storm and how Jesus was right there sleeping, and yet they were so scared. And it's a great conversation starter with kids about what do we do when we're in bed at night and it's dark and we're scared. We can remember that we're not alone, that Jesus is always with us. And I've even had kids make pillowcases that would with pictures of something that would remind them, in the Bible verse. Of course, they couldn't read it, but they knew it was there, and they had memorized it to remind them that when they got scared at night, they were never alone, that Jesus is always with them. Another Eric Carle book that I really like is The Grouchy Ladybug. Now, in The Grouchy Ladybug, she just gets up on the wrong side of the bed. I mean, we've all had these kids walk into our classrooms, right? And there's no reasoning with them. They got up on the wrong side of the bed, and it just feels like in that moment, their job is to make your life as miserable as possible. And that's what this ladybug's all about. And so she lands on a leaf, and there's the friendly ladybug is there on the leaf, and they're going to, she's eating aphids, but she wants all the aphids to herself. She doesn't want to have to be there and share them with the other one. And so she keeps flying off to different animals and trying to pick a fight with them. I mean, that's all she's doing, is she's just grouchy, and she wants to pick a fight. She didn't care. And the animals just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So a lot of times, in the schools, this is used to teach size and progression and that type of thing. But I love to talk about kindness with it, and about how the first ladybug, was kind to the grouchy ladybug. The grouchy ladybug definitely was not kind, flew off. But the first, she came back to the first ladybug, and the first ladybug was still willing to share the aphids with her, even when the grouchy ladybug had not treated her well. And that we can be kind like that. And it's a good tie-in with the Good Samaritan, or the Boaz and Ruth story. Horton Hears a Who. Now this one, it's a little bit longer. The pictures, of course, are, typical Dr. Seuss pictures, but the length of the book and the words on the pages are longer than probably a normal most of the books that I'm showing. So you would probably want to use this with older preschoolers, definitely with early elementary also. I mean, if I were to say to you, what is the line that's known here, you probably would know that. And that's a person's a person no matter how small. And what a great message that this book tells in the value of people. And I don't know if you're aware, Dr. Seuss was a Christian man. And if you read all of his books, there's theology in all of them that I've read anyways, well, most of them. And this one particularly use Psalms 139:14, that I praise you because I'm wonderfully made, and your works are wonderful. I know this full well. And of course, you can talk about times when Jesus welcomed the children, when he healed a sick child, how he saw Zacchaeus, the short guy, in the tree, trying to find him, and that was the person that he paid attention to. And Jesus was all about valuing those who were not necessarily valued as much in that culture, and even women. I mean, the value that he put on women was pretty radical for that time. So, Horton Hears a Hue, great way to talk about the value of people. The rainbow fish is just a fun story. You get the books that have the kind of the sparkle on them. That just adds to it. But in this story, the rainbow fish is, he wants to keep his scales to himself. And so all the other fish come around and they want him to share a scale with them. And no, I'm not going to do that. And so at some point, they just decide, we're not playing with you anymore, and they go away. And then the rainbow fish is very lonely, and what do I do? And he runs into, I think it was an octopus, and he gives him some wise advice, and that you really should share with others, and that true happiness lies there. And so finally the rainbow fish just kind of sucks it up and, okay, finally I'll give you a scale. And he gives a scale to one of the fish, and then all of a sudden he realizes, wow, that felt good. And so he starts giving his scales away to the other fish. And now, he's not the most beautiful fish in the ocean, but he is the happiest because he's given these scales away. So at the spiritual concept here, of course, is sharing, and that we don't, don't forget to do good and to share with others, is where the verse that comes from. You could talk about the widow who shared with Elijah the last meal, the boy who shares his lunch. But there's a couple of layers to this story that you don't want to miss, because there's two other things that happen in this story that should be a little bit problematic to us. And one is, if somebody doesn't want to share with you, are you just going to turn your back on them and say, well, I'm not going to play with you, I'm getting out of here? Or are you going to try to work it out? Or are you going to do it maybe in a kinder way? I mean, is there something else? And then you could just open a conversation and say, well, what do you think about those fish that refused to play with him because he wouldn't share? Well, yeah, it is kind of hard to play with a toy if you wouldn't share, but these were his scales, so were they right or wrong in doing that? And, that can open up a whole dialogue about that. The other thing is that comment about he was no longer the most beautiful fish in the sea, but the happiest. And I guess, you don't want to let that statement go by and without a dialogue about that, because is that what makes us beautiful, these shiny scales, or is it what's on the inside? And actually he probably was the most one of the most beautiful fish now because of his willingness to share with others. Now, an old classic, in fact, I remember this book when I was growing up, is The Little Red Hen. And this book I have right here is a pretty large book. This is what's called a library edition book, and these are really good for, reading to large groups of kids. They're a little more expensive than your ordinary book, but not horribly so. And most of these books can be checked out at the all of them should be able to be checked out at the library. But I just love this because it's so huge, and if you have 20 or 30 kids, you're even 10, they can see even down here to the little bugs. Now this story the little red hen lives in a house with some other animals, and when it comes time to do the work, the other animals really do not want to have anything to do with the work. And they just want to laze around and sleep and, do their thing. And so she goes through and she plants the seed for the grain. She grows it. She picks it. She, harvests it. She takes it to the mill and has it ground into the wheat so that she can make bread. And then she bakes it into a cake. And of course, as soon as the cake comes out, all the animals suddenly aren't so tired anymore and they want to eat the cake. And, there's this great repetition. She says, who wants to do this? And when it was time to do any work, not I, said the cat, not I, said the dog, And then when, of course, she pulls out the cat or the cake, who wants to eat the cake? Oh, I do, I do. But she's like, no, if you're going to do the work, if you're going to eat the cake, you're going to have to do the work to make the cake. And then the last page, you see all the animals chipping in and helping her with the housework from then on. Oh my goodness. Parents in your ministry will love you for doing this one and talking to the kids about, you're part of a family, or if it's in the classroom, you're part of the classroom. Everybody has to chip in. And, we don't have room for laziness. And so, that's the spiritual concept that we want to talk about, is laziness versus working together and cooperation. And that, when the Israelites built the tabernacle, it took all of them putting their money and their resources and their talents together and working together, or that would have never happened, and they wouldn't have been able to accomplish what it was that God had put before them to do. So, great example for the kids. The final book I want to talk about is the old classic Green Eggs and Ham. And I found that this is a great book to talk about persistence. And, Sam oh my goodness, he is going to make him eat green eggs and ham if it's the last thing he does. And he just will not stop, finding ways, would you, could you, in a car? Eat them, here they are. And he's like, I would not, could not, in a car. Well, would you like them in a tree, or in a box, in a fox, a house, a mouse, and he just goes through all these places and stays after him until finally he does try the green eggs and ham, and he finds that he likes them. It's a great book to talk about persistence. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. How Noah had to be persistent when he was building the ark. How Zacchaeus was persistent. He wanted to see Jesus. He wasn't going to let the crowd stop him. He was going to think of a way to make this good thing happen. But this also opens up a good conversation, too, about the times when it's good to be persistent and the times when it's not so good to be persistent. For instance, if your dad is telling you that you need, I need you, I don't want you to go next door to a friend's house. And you're saying, well, but I really, really want to go see this friend. No, you cannot. You have to accept no, or because at some point you're becoming disrespectful or dishonoring to your parents. So that is not the time to show persistence. Showing persistence is like when you're trying to tie your shoes, or when you want to show a friend who's really hurting love. And even though that friend may be rejecting your love and may be not wanting to talk to you or whatever, you can still pray for them. Prayer is a perfect time of when to be persistent. And some of these preschoolers, they know when they have a family member who isn't following Jesus, and praying for that person and praying, that those who aren't following Jesus will make that decision. So 11 books right there. You can start using them and teaching kids spiritual concepts with them. So now let's talk about what an actual lesson might look like when you teach it, in a classroom, or like we said, a Wednesday night activity, special event. Sometimes these are great for MOPS events or Mother's Morning Outs, anything like that. So let's start with the Very Hungry Caterpillar and talk about how we might be able to use this in a lesson. So you could start off with maybe having some activities for the children to do as they come in to the the classroom. Kind of having a hard time here. Okay. As they come into the classroom, you could have butterfly puzzles. You could have butterfly wings where they could play dress up. I know when we did this in my church, it was just amazing how there was this one little boy, as soon as he would hit the church doors, he would go flying down the hallway, flapping his wings. I'm a butterfly, I'm a butterfly. And I think we did this for 4 weeks with this particular story, and every single Sunday he couldn't wait to be in the room and talk about being a butterfly. It just captured his imagination. So having things like that, I know I've seen online someplace where they had a crawl through caterpillar tube. It's just darling. So, you can pick up some things fairly inexpensive to have some playthings out like that. Then you would gather the kids around and you would read the story to them. After you finished reading the story, maybe you would have a nature time, and what you can do is you can actually purchase from different toy stores or online the butterfly or the caterpillar, the little larvae, and then they will grow into the caterpillars, and then they will go into the cocoon and emerge as butterflies. And so you just keep them in a little cup, and if you do it over extended time each week, the kids could look at that and see how they're growing. And then eventually they would, you'd put them into a net when the cocoon starts to form, and then, the butterflies emerge. Just really fascinating to watch that. And then the kids can feed them. I think it's some sugar water stuff that you put in there, and then eventually let them go. And again, the kids are seeing that whole metamorphosis take place right in front of their eyes. Then you would do the Bible story, and so if you're going to do the Easter story, again, you would do Jesus in the tomb, Jesus coming out of the tomb, and they can totally see a correlation between that. I know when we did this, we started out with the egg, and you don't know what's inside of an egg, but Jesus knows what's inside of an egg, and we actually talked about Judas and how from the outside he looked like a disciple, but inside he was hiding something, but that he never really could hide that from Jesus, because Jesus knows what's on the inside here. Then you could have, you could do the rice in the bottle, and you could put some little, like maybe get some miniature caterpillars or butterflies and put those into the bottle with the rice, and the kids shake the bottle and they try to find, the whatever is in there. I guess you call that I Spy. A fun craft that you can do just takes a clothespin and then some pom-poms and a coffee filter. So you take the coffee filter and some food coloring, and you just let the kids drop little drops of food coloring on the coffee filter, and it just kind of spreads out like that. And you take the clothespin, and then you can just glue the pom-poms along the clothespin. On the end, you could glue little eyes on the head and put little antennas here. These are just pipe cleaners. So you can talk about the caterpillar, and then you could talk about how he becomes a new creation. And you just bunch up the coffee filter and stick it in here into the clothespin, and you have a butterfly. Another thing you can do is to have them pretend play with metamorphosis, where they ball up like they're in an egg, and then have them break out of the egg as a caterpillar and crawl on the floor. You could have some tables with blankets covered it, and they can go into the cocoon. Or I've seen, we've done it where we've put sleeping bags out, and they actually crawl in the sleeping bag, and then they crawl out, and now they're a butterfly, and you can give them like colorful scarves, and they can wave the scarves, and they can fly around being the butterfly. It's also fun to do some models of this, and I just use some stiff felt. So here's a leaf with the egg, and then the caterpillar emerges from that, and then he grows and grows and grows till he looks like this. And then he goes into the cocoon, and I can just use like a brown lunch bag. And then I would actually have put, here's a butterfly that I would have actually put in the cocoon beforehand. And then you have the kids pull out the butterfly, and they can see the whole metamorphosis idea again. And like I said, it's just stiff felt, just some glue, very easy to make those using actually the book as a pattern. A fun snack to do with this is to make a butterfly out of a donut, or a bagel would also work. But you just cut the donut in half, then you flip it where it kind of looks like the butterfly. I can't do that very well, can I? And then you could put a piece of licorice down the middle for the body, or you could put a banana, and that makes a perfect snack for that. So there's an idea of how you could actually use one of these books, a lesson kind of fleshed out here, so you can see the entire lesson come alive. So let's talk about some outreach events and how you can use this in a way other than just the classroom. Let's, I think we'll talk about the book Green Eggs and Ham here for a minute. And because Green Eggs and Ham is a pretty popular book, and there's a lot of fun things you can do with that, you could make a family night out of this, where families would could come, invite their friends. Sometimes there's that cringe if you're just worried about if an event's going to be what you want it to be for the community. When you have it, based on something like this, that helps a lot, because there's just already everybody knows Green Eggs and Ham, and as long as you do the event well, it's usually very well accepted by the community. So, we want to talk about persistence. So that can be, your theme that night is everything's going to have to do with persistence. So you would have a time where you would actually read the book, or you could have multiple copies of the book kind of scattered around your area, and with big pillows or bean bags, and you could let the parents read the books to the kids, where you could set it up more of a station type idea where they could drop in or out, whatever. You could also have an object lesson with persistence, where you could fill a baby pool with eggs, and you could have certain eggs have a sticker on it, and the kids would have to try to go through all the eggs and try to find the one with the sticker. I mean, you could have a prize attached to it, or you wouldn't have to. It could just be the fun of it, and you could talk to them about how it takes persistence to find that egg. And it would be fun to watch that, because I'm pretty much guarantee you there's going to be some parents that are going to be have that logical thing going on, so they're going to have a certain way to look for them, and others are just going to dig right in and be throwing eggs at each other and just, being crazy about it. You could have some Bible story stations where you could talk about Bible characters that had to show persistence. We talked about Zacchaeus. You could have somebody there that would tell the story. You could have them dressed up like Zacchaeus even. You could have a step stool, and you could make the step stool into have a cardboard tree kind of attached to it, and have the children take turns climbing up that and pretending to be Zacchaeus looking out. You could have a station with Noah and the ark, and you could have lots of stuffed animals around, and the children would practice putting the animals into the ark. Or you could even have like some very lightweight type hammers, and they could practice hammering nails into a piece of wood and pretending to be well, let's backtrack on that one, because I don't think they actually use nails. Yeah. Okay, so they could just pound on a piece of wood. And then Nehemiah and the wall is another one that had to use persistence, and you could have blocks, and the families would see, how high of a wall they could make, and just, have to be persistent, and, the wall not falling down, and talk about that. Just for fun, you could do an egg hunt, whether it was Easter time or not. You could dye all the eggs green, and then they have to hunt for that. You could also do spoon races between the families, with the egg, where you get the big wooden spoon and put the egg on the spoon, and away they go. Of course, you could not have a family night like this without having green eggs and ham to serve. And so you would obviously need to do that. Green eggs are very easy to make. You just put a little bit of food coloring in the eggs, mix them up, fry them, good to go. No problem there. Another thing you could do is just have a simple story time. This might be with older kids even, where I did this one summer on a Wednesday night. I was shocked that it worked as well as it did. Our attendance on Wednesday nights didn't even drop. I read chapter books to them, and they brought big pillows and blankets. I had popcorn and juice every night, and they just had such a great time relaxing and doing something so low-key and kind of slowing down from the, I'm outside playing all day, or, swim lessons, whatever it is that's going on in the summer. And the third idea is a book club where you could actually, this would be with just kids, not the families, and each week there would be a book of the week. You could do this during the day for the preschoolers that might be home. You could do it at night. You could do it a Saturday morning, lots of different times. Let's just say you were doing the Grouchy Ladybug. Some things you could do with that is, of course, read the book. Then you might have a circle time where you go around the circle and you talk about the book. You might have a craft time where they could make a puppet. Here's an example of one, which I made using paper plates, and we just painted them red. You could purchase the paper, red paper plates already. The hands were actually just the hands of kids traced and then put here in between the paper plates, and then just glue on the dots and the eyes and the antennas made out of pipe cleaners. You could make a snack with English muffins, and you put the pizza sauce on top of them. You could use olives for the spots, and then for the body you could use like maybe a green pepper or something. Cook that until it's just a little toasty, and then that would be a fun snack. Or you could do cupcakes, and where you would decorate them to look like ladybugs using black licorice sticks, and little dots could be any kind of black candy would work for that. You could also play a game with them where you call out the animals that the Grouchy Ladybug went and visited and was so terrible to, and they would just pretend to be that person. And you could have a lot of fun with the book club. You could actually design tote bags with the name, like your church's logo, or that you could come up with a name for the book club and that logo be there. And then every week have something that they would make that they would take home, along with, a little slip of paper telling them the parents what they have done. So those are just some ideas of things you could do inside the church walls. Now, outside the church walls, I did an event that just really changed my life in a lot of ways. I felt like I was becoming really insulated inside the church, and I needed to get out and be Jesus in the community. So I came up with this idea of doing a coffee shop story time. I went to our local coffee shop. We have Caribou here, a lot of places in the country. I guess it's Starbucks, whatever. And talked to the manager. When I went in, I had the prayer team praying for me. I was totally out of my comfort zone. And the manager, I was thinking I was going to have to talk her into it. I had this long proposal. I mean, I had it done just very businesslike. She was all over it. She let me rearrange the coffee shop. Every Tuesday at 10 o'clock is when we would meet. She gave moms half-price drinks. She let us advertise. She's just bent over backwards. And of course, it just changed the whole coffee shop, because moms and some stay-at-home dads too just loved it. Brought their kids. Sometimes grandparents would come with them too. They'd want to meet me. I thought the moms would go and drink coffee and just, have some time to themselves. And some did, but others wanted to sit with us. And I actually started developing relationships with them, which was just incredible. I would run into them in the community. It helped me in the community to get to know people better. There was even times when I was able to minister in the community if somebody was hurting. There was one time I ran into a lady whose daughter had just been diagnosed with a tumor behind her eye, and she was just feeling so lost, and I was able to talk with her and pray with her and, literally cry with her for a little bit. And it was all because of this coffee shop story time that we had started. And of course, the idea was to read to the kids, which is what we did. We read classical literature books, like I've shown you here. We didn't do the Bible stories. We did more what I called God moments, when they would just kind of naturally, just kind of float out of who I am, things I would say, sometimes things the kids would say. In order to be successful, one of the things I did do was I had a couple families in our church kind of seed it, so you would know that you would have at least some kids there. It's pretty awkward to show up for story time and there only be 1 or 2 kids. And that never happened because I had certain people that were always there, and I would have anywhere from 10 to 15 kids every Tuesday. And I live in the what we call a third ring suburb of Minneapolis, so we're out a little ways, but you know, for that coffee shop, it was actually a perfect number to have. If it would have been, we would have had any more, it would have been a little difficult. But not only did I read the stories, we would have finger plays we would do. I made little puppets, an example of some of the puppets. We made these little sponge families that we would use whenever we would talk about families. We had a cat that had gotten a cat fight, and it had a little, you know, patch over his eye because he had lost his eye. I was looking here for, oh, the little baby one. The baby one is just so cute. You know, so anybody that had the baby in the family, they had somebody like that. This one might look familiar. Of course, we did a little play off of a certain sponge family, or sponge guy. So that was a lot of fun. We also gave them a take-home paper that they could go home and do just a little simple activity off of one of the stories. And we gave the parents a little slip that told what stories we had read, and then a little activity that they could do at home with them. And parents absolutely ate this up. In my schedule, I had to quit doing it after a while, and when I go in the coffee shops, I still have them saying, "Oh, I wish you'd come back and do this." Just a huge success. And I would just really encourage you to think of ways to get outside the church walls if you aren't already doing that, because we can become so insulated from really what's going on in the world and think that the world looks like what inside the walls of our church look like, and it looks nothing like that. And it's just a great way to do that. The second way you could do also is you could have neighborhood book clubs, work very much like what I just talked about with the coffee shop story time, except you could set up different people in different neighborhoods to do these in their homes, especially stay-at-home moms, looking for other moms to connect with. They could do that. They would also work great in the summer if you advertised in certain neighborhoods and did them in the parks, and the kids could come. And of course, you might want to gear that toward a little bit older children also. So, one of the things I guess that I have learned that I just kind of a thought to leave you with is that, when we use things that are not necessarily thought of as church things, kind of more, I guess we would have used to have called them secular things, whether it's science experiments or books or games, whatever, that when the kids see those things in the world in different places, when one of these books is read in their preschool class or when it's read at story time or in their home, whatever, spiritual truth that we attached to that when they were in church, they're going to carry that home or out to the library, wherever, and they're going to make that connection. Oh yeah, I remember when we did that. I remember that ladybug was not kind, and Jesus does not want me to act like that. And they end up actually being lights in the world because they're going to pipe up and they're going to say those things, and that's a way for them to even start witnessing at a young age. So I wanted to show you just a couple of, let me grab these. A couple of products that we have through River's Edge curriculum that we've developed to help you be able to minister in this way. One of these is I Spy Butterflies, and I Spy Butterflies is a 4-week Easter curriculum. It could be used anytime really, but it uses the Hungry Caterpillar with that. Another one is Coffee Shop Storytime. And in this, I actually developed everything you need to start a story time in a coffee shop. There's the proposal I brought in. There's, there's the advertising. There's 10 lessons. There's the take-home pages. There's the papers for parents. There's pictures to show you how to make some of the different little puppets that I used. Pictures to show you how I set it up. Everything you need except the books, and the books you can get from the library, so not a problem at all. And the third resource I want to tell you about is only in downloadable form on our website, and that's actually called Dr. Seuss and the Bible. Right now we have 6 lessons on it, and it's using some of the books actually that I showed you today with lessons with everything you need to be able to teach this as a curriculum on your Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights or whenever. It includes, take-home papers for the parents. It includes all just tons of activities. I'm very big into hands-on type things, so that's completely a part of that. And finally, it includes something we're so excited about. There's an ebook for parents, and so the parents can download that ebook onto their iPad, their Kindle, their Nook, whatever it is, or on their computer. If they want, they can just print it out. But imagine talking about green eggs and ham at church, and talking about persistence, and then being able to give your parents this ebook. You could either give them a code that they can get on our website and download it for free, or you can put it on CDs for them, and they take it home, and they carry their iPad into the breakfast table, and they're able to flip that open. There's Bible stories for them to read, that have to do with persistence, just dialogue questions to help them know how to talk to their kids about spiritual concepts, and it's right there at their fingertips. And so, in a time when we're really trying to partner with parents and do family ministry, it's a great tool to be able to do that. So thank you so much for taking the last 45, 50 minutes of your time to listen to me tell you all about books, and I hope that you've found something that will be helpful to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. My email is deanna.gosha@gmail.com, and that should be on the handout that you were given. So you have a great day, and enjoy the rest of your